For your information, ADSS encourages the presentation and discussions of development and research issues, as well as their implications for agricultural and rural development. So for more than 20 years now, the ADSS has been facilitating a vibrant exchange of scientific and practical knowledge in agriculture and development within and even beyond the Los Baños science community. So we encourage you to engage in the open forum after our speaker's presentation. I'm Nova, and I'll be your host for this afternoon. This is ADSS on Agri-Food Systems Diagnostic, situating the agri-food system and the evolving impacts in the Philippines. We are delighted to welcome you all to today's significant presentation on agri-food system and its impacts, an issue that directly impacts our communities. We are also being live streamed via SEARCA's Facebook page. So for a few house rules before we start, please put your phone on silent mode. Reserve your questions for the open forum. Kindly use the microphone or write them, microphone on the aisles or on your tables, or write them on a piece of paper. For any social media sharing, please use the hashtag SEARCAADSS. To officially open the seminar and introduce our esteemed speaker, let us welcome Dr. Mercedita Zumbilya, our Center Director.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Nova. And welcome to the special session of ADSS, right? Yeah, and thank you for coming to to listen another presentation and that would hopefully help us all in our move towards agricultural transformation. Angga Pradesha is a senior scientist in Foresight and Policy Modeling Unit at the International Food Policy Research Institute in Washington, D.C. His research focuses on the application of economy-wide models to analyze issues related to international trade, climate change, natural resources, poverty, and food security. Before joining IFPRI, he worked as a research associate at the Asian Development Bank Institute, or ADBI, based in Tokyo. He holds an MA in International Development from the International University of Japan and a Master of Economics in Applied Economics from the International Islamic University of Malaysia. He earned his bachelor's degree in Agriculture and Resource Economics from Bogor Agricultural University in Indonesia. Dr. Angga, we will be having a joint project together. He is now here in the Philippines, and he will be working with SEARCA to do that and updating the projections. They will be providing projection results of what the nationally determined contribution would look like, considering all the policies and measures that are going to be adapted and implemented in the Philippines. So it's fortunate that SEARCA will be working with him and with IFPRI in as a whole, and definitely will be having a lot of learnings from all the works that the institute will be doing. So without further ado, I would like to bring Dr. Angga to present his agri-food system diagnostics, situating the agri-food system and the evolving impacts on the Philippine scenario. Dr. Angga?
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Mr. Sombila, and thank you everyone for joining this seminar. It's really great honor to be here. Very pleased and happy to be able to share our initial results in here with colleague in SEARCA. And as mentioned, this is also part of the project that we are working on together with SEARCA and also other different partners as part of this NDC projection or NDC report. All right, so I think just real quick, let me just go straight to the content. So the analysis that we're doing here, basically we call the Agrifood system diagnostic. We try to look at how the Agrifood system in the Philippines, in this case, what it looks like, and how the transformation has been happening. And we use the data about 15 years from 2009 up to 2023. And the second part, we dive into the value chain analysis by trying to understand what are the role of each value chain in the broader agri-food system, and then try to see what are the contribution of each value chains in this agri-food system growth. And finally, we want to also link that agri-food system growth into environment indicators, and we use this water footprint and greenhouse gas emission as a proxy for environmental impact. This is the framework that we use in defining agri-food system. There are many ways to define agri-food system, from social, what you call it, from political point of view, or from social point of view. But we use here the definition in terms of economic. We use national account data and employment statistic to define what agri-food system looks like in terms of GDP or total economy size, and what is the employment number of size of agri-food system compared to the whole employment in the economy. The component of agri-food system here, you can see there are 5 components. The first part, this is the primary agriculture, and we're not only interested or looking specifically on this one, but we want to learn what the activities of agri-food system beyond this primary agriculture, and that includes activity like agro-processing, trade, transport, food service, and so on. We can also group all these 5 indicators into two broader definition or two broader groups. The first one is what we call on-farm or the upstream sector, and that consists of primary agriculture or component A, and the off-farm or the upstream sectors consists of the rest from agro-processing, trade and transport, food service, and input supply. And you can see later there's actually a pattern of agri-food system when we compare the structure across the economy. This is the result after we apply the framework. The top one is the data the national account data that we use to define or measure the agri-food system GDP, and the bottom part is where we use the employment statistic data. As you can see here, the first component of agri-food system is primary agriculture, and the size is about 41 billion US dollar, right? And then when we calculate the off-farm sector, it's almost double as the primary agriculture, right? So the activity of agri-food system in the Philippines is not really concentrated on primary agriculture, but it's now more dominated by the off-farm sector. And these are the component of the off-farm sector. And when we combine these two, then that's how we define the agri-food system. And the total is about 118 billion. And the size, if we compare this number with the total economy, so the size of agri-food system in the economy is about 27 to 30%. But when we compare this with the size of employment in agri-food system, the employment share of agri-food system is actually higher, which is about 40%. And unfortunately, most of these workers are still working in the primary agriculture, and that's why in this primary agriculture we always see low labor productivity, because you need more people or more workers to produce the same or to generate same income compared to the off-farm sector. Now here we want to compare agri-food system of the Philippines with other countries, but let me show you why we present this the structure in this way. The first part, this share of agri-food system total GDP, it shows how big agri-food system in the economy overall, right? And then this share of agri-food system GDP is the structure of agri-food system within these two broader group that I mentioned, the upstream and downstream, the primary or on-farm and off-farm. And finally, these are the component within off-farm, which is this share within off-farm sector. If we calculate it as a share total of off-farm sector. this shows you as the income increase. This is the label for income level. As the income increase for the first part, the share of total GDP, you can see the total share of agri-food system GDP is actually going down, right? It start with like almost half of the economy consists of agri-food system, but then as the income increase, the share of agri-food system is going down. I mean, that's what we expect of the transformation of the healthy transformation in agri-food system. Within off-farm sector, which is this part, right? Sorry, which is if we take this share as 100% share, you can see here at the early state of development, in here, around 2/3 of the agri-food system GDP consists or dominated by the primary agriculture. But as the economy develop, as the production more sophisticated and income increase, diet increase, then that share of off-farm sector that was 32%, it goes up to 78%. And then finally, in terms of the share of agri-food system within off-farm sector, we can also see some pattern of transformation where the agri-food processing started going up or increasing together with the food service. It's also increasing. And we apply, I mean, we compare all these pattern with the Philippines and try to fit in where the Philippines is fit in this income level. As we know, Philippines is considered as lower middle income countries. And if you look at the size of agri-food system, it's kind of resemble this lower middle income countries structure, right? About 27 to 30%. But when we look at the share of agri-food system itself, we can see the Philippines has high share of off-farm sector, and it's more resemble to the upper middle income countries, right? Which has more share, higher share of off-farm sector. And then within the off-farm itself, again, I think we also see that there's a similarity in terms of the structure between the Philippine or the fitness of the Philippine off-farm sector with the upper middle income countries where the agro processing sector is pretty high. So I think this pattern where the Philippines kind of fall in between lower middle income countries to upper middle countries. I think because the per capita income of the Philippines itself is closer to the upper middle income threshold, right? Close to 4,000 US dollar per capita. So I think we can see that the transformation of agri-food system is moving toward the upper middle income structure. Now, here we want to see the supply demand structure. We represent the supply structure by using the agri-food system GDP, and the demand structure we use this household demand for the food products, right? If you look at the demand from the demand side, the dominant sector or dominant goods that consumed by household are coming or are filled by the agro processed products, right? So 62% of food consumed by household are processed food, right? But then when you compare with the supply side, only 30%, the share of supply side, only 30% are coming from agro-processed product, right? You can see there's a gap here, and where this gap being filled in, here you can see on the right panel, is mainly filled in by the import. So 83% of Philippines import or food import consist of agri-processed product. While when we compare the total import with export, you can see the size of import is almost 3 times of the export. And I think this could be an opportunity for the country to replace potentially this import demand with domestic good, because you can see here the demand is there, but mainly the demand of agro-processed products specifically is there in the country, but then mainly is coming from import, right? And when we compare this import export, there's a big gap, and this shows there's a deficit, trade deficit in agri-food system or agri-food product in the Philippines. And again, that could be a challenge, but I think it could be seen also an opportunity where the country could push more export in order to reduce this food deficit. Or in terms of performance, again, the first part is the agri-food system as agriculture share of total GDP, what we call the on-farm sector, right? And then the top part is the off-farm sector. And then this one is the middle one is the growth of the agri-food, not the growth, the share of agri-food system in total GDP. So in here you can see the on-farm sector share is going down, which is good, right? This remember the pattern that I showed you earlier. The on-farm sector, as income increase, the on-farm sector is supposed to be going down, and the total agri-food system also supposed to go down. But one thing that need to go up is this off-farm, right? And we see that pattern happening in the Philippines. In terms of labor productivity, we can see also all sector or all component of agri-food system productivity going up. The on-farm, off-farm, as well as total agri-food system productivity is going up. But then, unfortunately, after this COVID pandemic, the productivity started stagnating or plateau. So this is, I think, something that we need to think about why it's happening and how can we revive this pattern. Even though it's starting picking up in the last 2 years in 2023. Also, the good thing is that the off-farm labor productivity is still higher than the national average, meaning that the off-farm share potentially is going to go up in the future, even though all the sector productivity are plateauing or stagnant. Okay, this is where we start looking into the value chain analysis by looking at the commodity level. As you can see here, the top share or top contribution to agri-food system is coming from rice and followed by other livestock, which is mainly swine, and then fish and poultry and eggs. All these, if you combine, if total up, is close to 50% or half of the total agri-food system GDP. I think it's good that we see there's a diversification in terms of agri-food system component, right? But unfortunately, the highest contributor is coming from rice, and we know rice has a lower value added compared to other commodities. So that's also another thing that we can explore more. In terms of trade dependency, as I said earlier, the size of import is 3 times than the total export value in agri-food system. And if you look at the share of that import compared to total consumption or agri-food consumption, it takes about 7.2% of agri-food consumption. But when you look at the export share to total output, it's only about 3.2%. So meaning that the export share to total output is still much lower than the import dependency. And that could be an opportunity, meaning that there's potential to increase export, given that there's high demand of import. And if you go back to the top 4 commodities, rice, swine, right, fish, and poultry, you can see there the rice and other livestock actually are imported commodities or are imported goods, right? And rice has 4.2% dependency, while other livestock, which include also poultry here, has 5.7% of trade import dependency. And this again opportunity for the country to try to replace this imported commodities with domestic goods. And then in terms of fish has both trade dependency in both export and import. So we can say it's less. We can potentially improve the export, or reduce the import in order to reduce the trade deficit that we saw earlier. Now this is the performance this is where we look at the growth rate of all value chain, and you can see here the top part, that's the average growth rate of each component. So the agri-food system, the total food system growth, the growth of total agri-food system is about 3.2%, while the on-farm sector, the first component that I mentioned, part A, only grew by 1.6%, and this in pace with the population growth. But for the off-farm sector, it grew higher, which is 4.1%. So obviously, this agri-food system is mainly driven by this off-farm sector. If we want to look at the potential, right, you can see here the top performers of this agri-food system or the value chain commodities are vegetables, forestry, other fruits, and sugar, right? But among these, 5 or 6 commodities, only these three has high GDP rate, which is above 4%, meaning that in the on-farm sector has capacity or ability to catch up the growth rate in the off-farm sector, so that the total agri-food system sector can perform more than the average. So I think if we go back to that concept of trade, you can see there this vegetable and other food are top exporter, right? And we can see here, if we look at the performance of these two groups, they're actually performing, meaning that they have the ability to produce more or faster than other value chain. And that also, I mean, we could link that with the export potentials. All right, now we move to the environmental impact. This is the water footprint or water use by value chain, by sectors. The top 3 commodities are agriculture, aquaculture, coconut, rice, and maize. And this basically, yeah, these are the top one. But if we look at the specifically for blue water, which is irrigated water, and that's something that more valuable compared to other type of water, aquaculture and rice are the most dominant. This is just a graph to show you how efficient each value chain in terms of uh, water use efficiency. We compare the water use number of each commodities with the global average, and we can see here the rice, right, and then the oilseed or coconut sector, and even maize and other sector has higher water efficiency, higher use of water, meaning that the efficiency is less compared to global average. And this is something that we can look more. Um, this is where we want to compare in terms of the water efficiency with the GDP performance. So ideally, the each crops or each commodities or each value chain use similar share of water in producing similar share of agri-food system GDP. So if the commodity use big chunk of water, and in order to have more more environmentally production, they should ideally supposed to produce the same amount of GDP, meaning that the value of water is being valued proportionally with the GDP. Rice, if you can see here, this is the largest use of blue water. It use about 21% of total water in the system, and also, but it produces almost the same, about 28%. But for oilseed, it used 22% of water, but only produce GDP or contribute to the GDP by only 5%. So I think there's a gap here. But keep in mind, this oilseed, the type of water used by oilseed is green water. So it has less value compared to what rice is using. This is something that we could look further in the future. In terms of the growth of total water demand or total water use, we can see that the total water is going up over time, and that's coming from the water use in crop, livestock, and fisheries. But in terms of the blue water, which is the most important one, this is where the irrigation water being used. The rice and aquaculture are actually the main user or the most dominant value chain that use this blue water. In terms of emission, here we can see the structure of emission across commodities or across value chains. But in total, the agri-food system in the Philippines account for about 30% of total emission in the country. And out of that, rice is the largest emitter, right? About 60%. And it's pretty constant across over these last decades. I mean, we can see it as a problematic commodities or the biggest emitter, but I think this we could also see as an opportunity, right? Because we can see here the biggest emitter is coming from rice, meaning if the government or the country wants to reduce emission in the agriculture sector, they can simply just focus on rice, right? Any technology that could reduce emission in rice could simply reduce or suppress the emission in agriculture. The same thing, emission in agriculture also going up over time. But in the last 10 years, between 2010 and 2023, we found that the main contributor of this emission are coming from rice sector, while the contribution from other crops is just growing modestly. And this is again an opportunity to reduce emission within agri-food system by simply focusing on rice sector. All right, just to conclude, first we observe that there is transformation happening between 2009 and 2023, and that can be captured by the reduction of on-farm sector or primary agriculture to total GDP, while the off-farm sector productivity is going up over time. And then if we compare the growth of on-farm with off-farm, on-farm or the primary agriculture growth is pretty marginal, about 1.6%, which is in pace with the population growth, but the off-farm sector is quite performing, right? And I think that's a good sign of the transformation, I mean, the good sign of stating or claiming that the transformation in agri-food system is happening in the Philippines. But then I think in the last 5 years or last 4 years after the COVID or the pandemic, we can see there's a plateauing or stagnation in terms of the labor productivity, and I think that's something that we need to look at further. In terms of environmental impact, again, I think it could be a good thing or bad thing, but I think it is an opportunity to know that the environmental impact or environmental pressure coming from few value chain or few commodities, which are aquaculture, coconut, and rice. But specifically on the emission, rice is the main contributor for emission, and yeah, I mean, one strategy if we want to reduce emission in agriculture, the government or the country can focus on rice sector. So overall, we know that agri-food system contribute or play key roles in the economic development process by reducing poverty, increasing food security, growth, and access to nutritious food. But I think it's important to make sure that all the production process need to be environmental, need to be sustainable by considering the environmental impact. And also, based on this analysis, we can see that only few sectors or few value chain or commodities that are responsible for this environmental impact. And I think policies that focus on those few sectors like rice, coconut, and aquaculture could help not only increase food security by increasing production, but also try to reduce environmental sustainability by looking at what technologies or potential ways to reduce emission within that sector, emission or water use in that sector. So I think that's all from me. I think, yeah, this is a preliminary analysis, and I'm really looking forward for your input or suggestions as we work on this analysis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Angga. From what I got from your presentation, You gave us a peek on the Agri-Food Systems Diagnostic, which has three parts: structure and dynamics, value chains, and environment, with the Philippines AFS decomposed into 14 broad value chain groupings, rice as the highest contributor. Okay, so we now open the floor for your questions or comments or insights for our audience here at the Drillon Hall. Kindly use the microphone located along the aisle or on your tables, but please introduce yourself and the organization you represent or are affiliated with before posing the question. Any questions from the floor? Because I have several from Facebook. Okay, let's go with the Facebook first. There's one question here, sir. How can policy and governance affect the agri-food system? And what about the non-agri-food system? Is it possible to have diagnosis on this aspect? The non-agri-food system. Sir, maybe you should stay here or I will question.
Yes. Yeah, I think the answer is yes, right? I mean, the reason why we focus on agri-food system is because there's a challenge to define it, right? Because mostly the what statistic report by the government, especially the statistic office, they just look at the national account, separating agriculture, industry and services, right? While the food itself, it's not only happening in agriculture sector, but also in the manufacturing where food is processed before going to the household. I mean, diagnostic itself, I mean, in the non-agriculture sector, I believe that's the question. That depends on what question that you want to ask, right? Or you want to focus on. If it is only statistic, it's available. We have, we have group of, or you can say the category of GDP by grade sector, agriculture, industry, and services, and within that, there are each component. If the idea to just look at the non-agriculture, you can have the rest of the sector other than agriculture, starting from manufacturing, which consists of like whatever is like coal, and then food industries, and then chemical, what else? All this manufacturing process, and then services sector, like trade and transport, etc. But if the question about non-agriculture, looking at specific sector, I don't know, maybe like what is booming right now about the analyzing how's the AI looks like, or whatever industry that hard to define using statistic, then you need a framework to do that. What we did, we just have to define using more detailed data to come up with the aggregate sector to define the definition that we want to analyze.
Thank you for that, sir. There's another one. Given the evolving economic, environmental, and social challenges in the Philippines, what are the most critical leverage points within the agri-food system that could drive transformative change and ensure food security and sustainability?
Yeah, I think what I mentioned earlier, it's kind of a nice to see this agri-food system perspective, right? Because you can see the whole value chains and then try to look at it, the analysis by each commodities, right? At the aggregate level, we know that agriculture contribute pretty big to the economy. Agri-food itself is like 30% of emission to total economy. But then within that agri-food system, we can pinpoint that the rice sector is the main contributor, right? So I think one way to reduce that emission, the government can focus on rice, and I think the government knows very well about rice industries, but maybe on production side, but not really on the environmental side. And I think that can be something that if we can fill in.
Excuse the microphone. Okay. The lady first at the back, and then yeah. No, it's okay. Yeah, you.
Hello, hello. Hello po, good afternoon. I'm Craig Stephen Avenilla, a freshman from the College of Development Communication under the degree program of BS Development Communication. So first po is I would like to uh, thank you po for giving us a time to uh, give us insights about the Agrifood system diagnostic systems. And is I'd like to ask a question lang po since I'm creating an article about this is uh, how would you introduce the idea of agri-food system diagnostics to the local folks or farmers that is new to the idea of the AFS and uh, what could be the implications to uh, in in the production of certain crops and their framework for cultivating the said crops po?
Yeah, Agrifood system Agrifood system definition itself is just, I think it's we just want to know how big the role of food in our economy, right? I mean that share is pretty big in the last 50 years, like in 1970 or 80s, right? I mean, it's very critical because without food, people die. And at that time, that's what happening. In Bangladesh, there's famine happening in the 70s. And that's why I think um, getting, independency or getting independent, having independent of producing food is key. Um, but unfortunately, until now, that mindset's still coming in right now, right? And we know that the rice become like not just commodities, but it's multiple commodities. It's all countries in, especially in Southeast Asia, has very strong ownership of rice. The target is not having food security, but having food self-sufficiency, meaning we have to produce our own rice, right? Um, but then the ecosystem try to look at in broader ways, right? You can see if we look at in a more like macro level, the component ecosystem is not only on farm but off farm, right? And we could also see that the component of ecosystem is not only production but also from the trade. And you can see there in term of the trade, actually the import in the Philippines is much bigger, 3 times than export, right? Well, maybe the country focus mainly on rice, which is in terms of the trade very small, right? And in terms of value added very small. Well, there's a bigger opportunity that the country or the government should look at where that import, the big import, which is coming from agro-food processing, right? And that's coming from the downstream. So I think, yeah, it could help people to see that the challenges and opportunities. And I think the opportunities for the country, not only in the Philippines and many other countries, we see that um, there are more food that imported, and that's not related to rice, but other commodities that have higher value added. And I think that should be seen as an opportunity, meaning that the value chains need to be upgraded, not on the on-farm sector, but moving to the off-farm sector.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. The other young lady there at the back.
Hello, good afternoon po, sir. My name is Catherine Salas from BS Agriculture, majoring in agricultural systems. First of all, thank you so much for this talk. Tomorrow I'll be talking about agri-food systems as well for my thesis, so I was very excited to go here. So my question is, the agri-food system, as you showed in the framework, ends at food services. If the goal of the policies, according to your PowerPoint, should be environmental sustainability, is circularity on the horizon for the PH economy, like a circular agri-food systems rather? I'm asking if there could be a link or a feedback loop between the food service going back to primary agriculture here in the Philippines on a policy level. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. I think yeah, first of all, the food service in the country is about, I think, 9 to 10%, right, of the off-farm sector, and almost 50% of our agro processing, right? If you link with the environmental factors, again, it traces back to the production side. It's coming from rice, right? So I think if the concern is about the emission, right, or even water footprint, I think by focusing rice and its value chain, would be more effective ways, right? And if you link at rice with the food service, obviously, I think most people in the country still consuming rice in the restaurant, right? Even they serve rice. So yeah, that would be one way to link food service with the production. And in terms of circular economy, yeah, I think in terms of waste, we do have analysis, but not here. The other one, um, the waste sector in the Philippines is quite big, right? I think more than 10%, and that are captured in the processing as well as the food service. But I think the processing part is quite is bigger. Um, and in terms of the data, it's everywhere from the on farm to the off farm. But yeah, I mean, if you want analysis, you can look at the data that we use is social accounting metrics, or in here at the search office published a supply use table. It has 250 sectors, right? And you can see one of the sector is waste, right? And that waste is being used or linked with all sector across the economy. And if you look at the total emission of waste from this IPCC definition is, I think it's about 13%. So yeah, that would be a good, indication, or if you want to look at the importance, like you're doing a research, right, or for your thesis, I think that's a good way to, I mean, a good starting point to look at or start analysis by looking at the data, the supply stable data. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much, Mr. Angga. I have a question coming from a scientist, pure scientist. One of your slides just now, you showed that the off-farm activities is higher compared to the on-farm, right?
Yes.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, when you talk about off-farm activities in the agri-food system, that will go to the transportation, processing, dissemination of products, blah, 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 right? But how do you look at back into the import of processed food or maybe raw materials that be brought back to the Philippines to be, to be processed? Will that really give a negative impact on the production side of agriculture in the Philippines? Although that we have the off-farm activities is higher, but still the production side is lower. So what are they processing? What are they transporting? Blah blah blah. So is it from the raw materials that may be imported by Philippines? So how do you leverage on that?
Yeah, I think I can answer that by looking at the share of import, agri-food import to total consumption, right? And I mean, it's not that big, but still, I mean, substantial, like 7.2%, right? So, but meaning that if we look at the total off-farm sector, and that off-farm sector has about, I think, what, 60% or 60, more than 60%, right? I think of the total GDP. But then where it's coming from import is 7%. So out of that 6%, maybe like 14, 15%. If, yeah, roughly speaking, that's the share of the import within the off-farm sector. Yeah, I think it's not that big, but yeah, there are some component of import within that off-farm sector. And I think in terms of negativity, yeah, I'm not sure how you look at negativity. Is it because of the um, dependency of farm to the import? Yeah, I mean it could be, but then we just have to look at what what are the component of that imports, right? And if we look at that trade dependency, I think rice is 4% of total. The largest one is oil seed, and yeah, I forgot the top one is, yeah, if we can go back show the slide, that will be useful. And that's not really, I think like 20% of, oops, sorry, go back. Yeah.
Oh, this not, yeah, it was, yes. Good.
Anyway, this here you go, yeah. So other fruits, oilseed, and forestry. But if you look at these three commodities, other fruit, oilseed, and forestry, within other fruits here, forestry here, what else? Other fruit, forestry, and oilseed. But oilseed here mainly is not coconut, right? This is mainly are the vegetable oils. While in here, the production of this oilseed here even still 5%. This is our coconut, but the import has coconut. It's a vegetable oil. So yeah, all these three forestry, oilseed, right? I think it's less than 10%. So I mean, the dependency is there, but not that high. I think. And if you look at these, if you go back to the structure itself, here 65%, right? Out of 65%, let's say 10 or 15% of it are coming from import. So about less than 10%, right? Six, yes, or 10% maximum is coming from import. And out of that, the food processing and trade and transport. See, trade and transport obviously is domestic, right? So out of this, maybe, yeah, it's probably I would say like less than 10% are coming from import, the common offset. Yeah, it's there, but not that significant. But I think this is something that we need to look at the gap. You know, the import is 3 times than the export. This is coming from you know what you call it the foreign savings on the foreign saving, and foreign saving affect how countries in terms of the debt and everything, the macro level. If there's an effort, I mean this there's supposed to be an effort to reduce this trade balance by either increasing this or reducing this. Ideally, we should increase the export, and we can see the potential of the export in here, right? Bananas, other fruits, forestry, all these 3 or even 4 commodities has potential, meaning that it has strong export component, meaning the economy or the producer or the player knows how the export market looks like, and they have capacity to explore that market. And when we look at the performance, right, of that forestry, vegetables, and fruits, their performance they outperform the average, meaning they have potential for future growth, given that their past performance is higher than the average. Even in the on-farm sector, they're performing much higher than the average GDP. So I think yeah. I mean, it would be nice to look at that further, but at least for this time, we just have to stop the analysis up to here at the macro level.
Sir, there's another question from Facebook. Do you have any suggestion or suggestions on how an ordinary Filipino rice farmer could cope with the government's import-driven strategy to meet the food requirements of Filipinos?
Sorry, can you say it again, the last part?
Any suggestions on how an ordinary Filipino rice farmer could cope with the government's import-driven strategy to meet the food requirements of Filipinos?
This import-driven strategy, I think what I understand is that the government tried to reduce import, right? In order to increase self-sufficiency. I think, I mean, it's a noble cost, right? They want to country or the government want to increase self-sufficiency, want to increase independency and production. But we need to look at the consequences of that particular policy. And so far, I mean, we did analysis before the way the policy works, that it distort the market, right? It really suck in all the resources into rice, where I mentioned earlier, it has lower value added, and economy, the economists always look at the trade-off, right? What if that resources then being sucked in or being used or being forced to be used to produce rice? What if that resource is being used to other sectors, like growing fruits, or vegetables or other high value crops, or even try to use to promote export crops. And again, we saw this, there's a big gap in terms of the uh, import or big trade deficit when compared export and import. I think that's something that we need to look at, and the cost is pretty high, right? And for analysis, when we look at the economic analysis, meaning that the impact to the whole economy is that by crowding in the resources into rice, the structural transformation is slowing down, meaning that the size of GDP or the size of agricultural GDP that's supposed to go down here, right? We expect this size going down, right? And that's kind of a stagnant, right? So ideally, if the Philippines falls closer or resemble more to the upper middle income countries, right, in here and in here, this size should be lower, meaning that the size of agri-food system is supposed to be like within this about 18% or 19%, but still high, about 27%, which is fine, closer to lower middle income countries. But at the on-farm sector, it's actually closer to upper middle income countries. So meaning the on-farm sector is not really transforming as the off-farm sector, and we can link that with the GDP growth, right? The GDP growth here you can see here, the off-farm sector grew by 4%, but the on-farm sector is only 1.6%, right? And even when price has been promoted so much, it only grew by 2%, right? Less than the average agri-food system GDP. So I think that's something that we need to look at, right? Even though it's a noble cause, but then there are consequences to the economy and how much that costs, whether the country willing to bear it or not, and how we look at it. Yeah.
Do we have other questions? Yes.
My question would be, what would your general diagnosis of the agri-food system in the Philippines? Considering all the data that you've presented, what do you call that? The off-farm AFS growing while the primary agriculture um, lagging behind. So there is some sort of masking off of the off-farm AFS on the primary agriculture. So my question would be, what is the general diagnosis of the agri-food system in the Philippines?
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't really put in here, and we didn't really look at it deeper. But at the macro level, is well, I can start with this maybe. Here, you know, um, here you can see here the share of agro-processed product is pretty high, right? And that's coming from import, and the country able to do that, meaning the country has money to import, even though the export is small, right? Meaning that the trade deficit, meaning you spend more on import than what you earn from export. And that ability, I think, is coming from the society itself, from the household itself, because I think the income of the people, I mean the whole system of the economy or per capita income of the people is pretty high, right? Meaning they're able to import the food from abroad rather than producing in the country. And also, I'm not sure, I haven't really looked at it, but in this agri-food, sorry, this on-farm sector or primary agriculture, this activity happening in the village, right, in the rural area, and I think it would be good, or it would be a good evidence to show how the wages in primary agriculture, if the wage is too high, meaning the farmer, it's has less ability, I mean, or the system itself has less ability to hire labor to produce the commodities. And I suspect that's the one, because this is just my own personal thought, is that Philippines has a high share of foreign workers, right? And foreign workers send money, and many are living or sending money to the rural area. As you have more money in the rural area, right, inflation goes up in that particular area, and that may disturb the production of agriculture, meaning that uh, the growth of agro production is slowing down or lagging behind because probably there's a inefficiency or there's a distortion happening there. I suspect I don't know, maybe the agricultural wage is too high, so it's hard to increase the production given that the lack of labor, I assume, because the mechanization I don't think it's very massive like in Brazil. So the role of labor is still key in the primary agriculture production. Um, yeah, I think that's just my limited point of view.
So, overall, your analysis is very interesting, and we understand, of course, that when we take a look at this industrialized food systems, we're really after for efficiency, and what you just related is really related also to the concept of efficiency.
Yeah.
However, there's more to food systems than efficiency. There's other outcomes such as health as well as resilience, for instance. Any thoughts on policy levers that you think are necessary so that we can redesign and transform this related to other outcomes in addition to efficiency? Thank you.
Right. Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, actually, we have the analysis, but we didn't include it for this one. We did that for other countries. That's the second part of analysis where we will use the model to simulate what if we upgrade or increase the productivity of each commodity value chain. So we use the model to shock or to increase productivity of each value chain and see what is the outcome in terms of not only GDP but also poverty. And we have another indicator which is diet diversity. So I think that would be one way to define how agriculture system linked to health, especially healthy diet. And in terms of resiliency, I think that's also another thing. So if you shock, like in other studies, if you shock each commodities, it will give different impact. For small, sometimes for small sector like here, it could be have high impact, right? Sometimes for the big sector here, it only give you small impact. So there's a dynamic there when we analyze the value chain by looking at the potential impact of productivity increase or upgrade in or increase in productivity or upgrade in value chain. But yeah, that's something that we did, but not yet for the Philippines.
Okay.
Hello po, it's great again. As an aspiring development communicator, I'd like to ask, although this may sound a bit far-fetched, pero would there be projects or what could be the potential projects that will be proposed to improve the AFS GDP, productivity, and other sectors of the system? Although it may sound far-fetched, pero what could be the ways forward or what could be the potential projects that can be implemented to improve the AFS GDP and productivity and the other sectors?
Yeah, I mean, when you define projects, either from government or private sector, right? Yeah, that's not really my main area. But we can assume like the simulation that I mentioned earlier. Like if we increase productivity of rice, right? We can assume that there's a new varieties that could improve productivity of rice. By certain percent, and then we do shock and then look at the impact. Same thing for the rest of the sector. We just have to find what kind of technology upgrade or efficiency improvement that can be introduced within each value chain. And I think that would help the government or whoever in charge of trying to improve the Agrifood system performance is that they need to look at which technology that can give the highest impact, right? Because it costs uh, to promote certain value chain. They just have to make sure which value chain that we need to promote, given that you have so many commodities and you have limited budget. So I think the main problem is that how to pinpoint which value chain that could give the highest bang for the buck, basically.
Okay, I think the lady in black, are you raising your hand? Okay.
Hello. I, Good afternoon. I'm Therese. I'm from the Asia Foundation. Um, you mentioned about, I guess, what struck the most within your talk was the discussion of environmental impacts. And I think in a room full of economists, and we're all trying to, wherein a majority of people often just focus on efficiency. I would like to ask your perspective as an economist on how you would probably convince different institutions, both government and and NGOs, in terms of looking at the looking at this as not looking at your statistics as not simply as non as not simply immediately curtailing, for instance, the production of rice or processes in aquaculture because they degrade the environment. What what suggestions have worked probably in upper middle income countries have and how can we as the Philippines do this?
So yeah, let me try to understand. So meaning that, all right, so we know, I mean, what I'm saying is more efficiency, and then I just link it, slightly with environment, right? There's like implication. But then your question is how we can like redefine or put different perspective in terms of the importance of environmental itself compared to the economy, or no?
I guess in terms of how agriculture impacts the environment in the Philippines, a lot of the discussion is often simplified in terms of um, how a product harms the environment, therefore we should curtail production. Exactly. So how have other countries, probably upper middle income countries, put implemented strategies, for instance, in terms of safeguarding production alongside improving environmental impact?
Yeah. That's. I think that's the next stage, right? Meaning that first you want to aim for one objective, but then your question is, why don't we just maximize two objectives, right? I mean, again, as a modeler, I use model to answer that questions, and that question actually can be answered by having the model to maximize more than one object. We call it multi-objective function or multi-objective policy or whatever, where we try to not only maximize one objective or one variable, but also more than one. In this case, let's say we want to increase rice production or increase calorie intake, but also reduce emission and probably increase GDP, right? So three objective and being aimed with one run, meaning like when we do simulation, solve the model to aim for these three objectives, and that can be done, right? But I think the idea is that the model will say, like, let's say you have, if you maximize GDP, this is what you get, right? In terms of GDP, let's say 20% increase in GDP, but if you want to minimize the emission, instead of getting 20% GDP increase, you only get maybe only 5%, right? Both positive, but it's lower if you want to reduce emission. And this multi-objective try to find the optimum way in between is 5 and 20%, right? and then you get that how much, let's say, land you need to or how much what you call it, how much land need to be expanded or allocated for rice, for fruits, etc., using this what you call it, the multi-objective function or result. But then, in reality, it won't. Yeah, I mean, in reality, the decision will be decided by the policymakers, right? So that's something that we're trying to explore. And one project that I'm doing in Pradesha is trying to do that. Like we try to bring the model result, present to the policymakers, and then try to capture or try to understand their point of view. Can we do like a game behavioral approach or what you call it, the game behavioral experiment, and then we do the iteration over and over and see which level of which solution that actually fit with the policymakers. It has it between 5 to 20%, which GDP growth that they really want to aim. And we invite different ministries from agriculture, environment, planning, etc., etc. So we can see perspective from different agencies. So I think I mean your question can be done using the process we're doing, but it's more complicated and takes time and more efforts. But I think that's the current approach that we are thinking ideal to capture or to find solution of this complication between environment and economy trade-off. Yeah. Sorry, I answered too long.
Okay, thank you very much. One last question. We have room for one last question.
Good afternoon. I'm Carla from the Research and Thought Leadership Department. So my question is, in light of the agri-food system, diagnostic, and the evolving impacts on the agri-food systems in the Philippines, how can local farmers adopt their practices to remain resilient and competitive in changing agricultural landscape? So I have here a list specifically, for example, policy-oriented. What adaptive strategies can be supported through policy and capacity building to help local farmers respond to evolving challenges in the Philippine agri-food system? And of course, as we all know, local farmers, they have limited access in technology and innovation. So
Yeah, that's a hard question. I mean, maybe I can share with you the from the study that I recently did. It's related to the risk assessment, right? Because the agriculture is the most or the most risky business, right, compared to other industry or other business, right? Because it's has high uncertainty based on weather, also the farmers' performance, right? Different farmers are robots. So one farm is good, the other not good, and the location also matters. The weather matters, etc., etc. So there are risks that need to be assessed, and we do that. We did that. We incorporate risk factor in the model, and one thing is that one thing that we observe, I mean, this is in the literature, and we also observe in our results that most farmers are risk averse, right? Don't like taking risks. And reason, I mean, it's logic because they don't have anything, to rely on. If their plan or the crop that they plan fail, they couldn't eat next term or next year. So they have to be very, very careful when making decision, and that's why most farmers are risk averse. And I think one way to relieve that is that the government could step in by reducing that risk averse behavior, meaning that farmer has to have something to hold on, right? when they want to do their investment or production, they need to have something to hold on. I mean, in here we have pantawid, right? Cash transfer, which is a good way to help increase farmers' resilience because many farmers are poor, or maybe giving soft loan for the production or even insurance. That's right. So there are many tools or tools to help farmers to reduce their risk averse so that they can put more investment, and upgrade their value chains. The reason why farmers like or prefer to plant rice is because first they can eat, if once it's produced, and then second there's support from the government, big support on the rice, and also the price is quite stable, right? So that's why planting rice is the best choice for farmer. But then, as I said, there's a trade-off, right? What if that same farmer planting other crops that are more productive or can help them earn higher income? But again, the reason is they don't do that because it's too risky, right? So I think find ways to improve, one way is to reduce that risk averse so that the farmer can improve or increase their investment and upgrade or increase their income and upgrade the value chains to higher value added crops.
Okay, so that wraps up our open forum, sir.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
So if you want to listen again to his presentation, we will be uploading a video of this seminar on our website as well as on our Facebook page, along with the PDF version of his presentation. Kindly check our website and Facebook page regularly. With that, may I kindly invite Dr. Sumbilia to join us here, ma'am, and Dr. Noor. Yeah, Dr. Noor is. I think I saw Dr. Sergio is not here anymore. Okay, Dr. Noor and Dr. Sumbilia to join us here on the stage to present the certificate of appreciation and token of gratitude to our esteemed guest speaker, Mr. Angga Pradesha. So allow me to read the citation and the certificate. The Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture awards the Certificate of Appreciation to Mr. Angga Pradesha for sharing his expertise as speaker during the Agriculture and Development Seminar Series on Agri-Food Systems Diagnostic, Situating the Agri-Food System and the Evolving Impacts in the Philippines, held on 22 May 2025 at the SEARCA Drilon Hall, Los Baños, Laguna, Philippines, signed by Dr. Mercedita Zumbilia, SEARCA Center Director. Okay, thank you very much, Sir Angga, Ma'am Mercy, and Ma'am Noor. To our seminar attendees and guests, your insights and takeaways from this seminar are very important to us. So please share them through our feedback form by accessing the link or the QR code flashed on the screen. Flashed on the screen. Sorry about that. Okay, there you go. You may take a photo of this slide and fill out the form after the seminar. So once again, we would like to thank Mr. Angga Pradesha for sharing with us his very, very educational and informative and insightful presentation. Thank you all for coming and joining us in this afternoon's seminar. We have prepared light refreshments outside at the lobby, so you can get some on your way out. For those of you who have not yet liked our Facebook page, please do so that you will be updated on our programs and activities in the Southeast Asian region. You are also welcome to visit our website at SEARCA.org. We look forward to welcoming you all again at future ADSS events. Thank you very much. Soon, very soon. Thank you very much for your participation, ladies and gentlemen. But before you go, may we request everyone for a group photo. Everyone converge at the center. And ma'am and Sir Angga, over here. Yeah. And for those who have not signed the registration form, please sign them before leaving the premises.
Parang hindi na sila, nawala na sila. Tapos sila sila.